Hello and welcome to Hawkeye Nation. This is HawkCast, your Iowa football, basketball, and recruiting podcast brought to you by Go Iowa Awesome and Rivals.com. I'm your recruiting analyst and host, Eliot Clough, at Eliot Clough on Twitter, joined as always by publisher Adam Jacoby and managing editor of the site, Ross Binder. Before we get started today, make sure that you drop a like, drop a comment if you're watching or listening on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. We're almost to 1,000 subscribers, so quickly approaching that number. If you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, hit that subscribe. And that way you don't miss an episode on our podcasting platforms. And if you are new or not a premium subscriber, you should do that today. Do not miss out on this promo code we have going on right now. It ends tomorrow, or I guess today, more than likely, as you're listening, Monday, June 24th. Promo code IA Visits, all caps. IA Visits. You can visit any of our Twitter accounts as well and find that link, but head over to iowa.rivals.com. Sign up today. Use promo code IA Visits, and you'll get premium content for free up until fall.
Free.
So FREE, $0, 0 cents free. Plenty of stuff going on as it is official visit weekend it was big official visit weekend and at Iowa for football, the 2025 class. Couple commits on Sunday, couple more commits to come this week. If you are a premium subscriber, you know who they are already. So do that today. Don't miss out on that opportunity. Again, big official visit weekend. Two commits, Lucas Allgaier, Cameron Herron. Lucas Allgaier, a 3-star tackle from the St. Louis area. Cameron Herron, a 3-star guard from Warren Central in Indianapolis. As the recruiting analyst, I can tell you these are two big wins. These are two definitely guys that fit the mold of what George Barnett wants to do on the interior and on the exterior of the Iowa offensive line. Joining Joey Van Wetsinga as a commit. I know he could play either side of the ball, but I see him as a center for sure. So two big wins today for the Iowa 2025 recruiting class. That number goes to 10 now that they have in that class. Adam, you're our local former offensive lineman, college offensive lineman, D3 college offensive lineman, we'll say, which was true, right? D3 NAIA?
It was D3. I was defensive tackle in college. I did
Oh,
play a little O line in high school. None of it ever very well, but I've got an inkling of familiarity with playing on both sides of the line at the very least.
okay. Well, tell me, I just want to start with you guys, and then I'll offer my thoughts as the recruiting analyst here. Which again, you can find more of that and some really good content from Lucas. I'm talking to Cameron either tonight or tomorrow. Premium content on iowa.rivals.com. But initial impressions from what you've seen of their film and stuff like that, Adam.
Boy, I'm especially excited about Cam Heron. In the premium board, when we were making our predictions and our projections for who we most wanted to see the commit come from, I picked Heron because one, his offer list is huge. Two, he is exactly that type of old school mauler, and you're going to hear that talk a lot when we talk about these commits that have come in. But he's just a big nasty dude who you can line up and take out the guy in front of him. And sometimes it does not have to be more complicated than that. And a lot of the Midwest was going after him. And for Iowa to pick this one up, huge credit to George Barnett for sticking with it and having the right kind of pitch for these offensive line recruits. But yeah, when you watch Heron, you see athleticism, you see size, you see that mean streak, the proverbial play to the echo of the whistle. That's what I was getting out of this kid. And I think that he's got a chance to compete, especially in that interior part of the line, guard, maybe even center like James Daniels. We can't really rule that out as yet, but he's that sort of guy that you can plug him into that interior of the line and he's going to compete for you as long as he's healthy.
Ross, you've edited a bunch of my stuff, and I included both of these guys as potential commits in a preview article going into this weekend. Two of four right now, third of the four potentially coming here soon, and a fourth maybe, but we'll see. Anyway, Ross, of these two guys, you've read a lot about them and content from me. What do you think about them, and just share your thoughts on what you think of the two commits?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're two really solid additions to Iowa's future offensive line. They're two guys who add a lot of, a lot of size and just a lot of the right attitude that Iowa especially needs out of an offensive lineman. You need someone that's really motivated, really has that mean streak, because Iowa's not getting the 5-star, the 6'8", 300-pound kids that already have freak genetics necessarily, but they're getting guys that they can be built up and that are going to be really strong, really tough, really dedicated, and are really going to push guys around and really play with a little bit of that chip on their shoulder in a good way, and take it out on the opponent, the defensive lineman that they're up against. And I think both these guys look like the sort of guys that Iowa's had a lot of success with these types in the past, and they're guys that can definitely, I think, really succeed for Iowa in the future if they, everything works out. And obviously, you can never project like injuries or anything, but yeah, I think on paper these look like really, really solid. They really fit the Iowa mold well, and are definitely, offensive linemen aren't always the most exciting commits, but they're some of the most necessary. You've got to have those really solid guys up front, because, and Iowa fans know that as well as anybody from the last few years. It's been a rough watch on the offensive side of things for the Hawkeyes. And, there are many faults there, but the offensive line play has been one of them. It just hasn't been consistent enough. And getting guys like this in and developing them in the program is a really good sign for hopefully fixing those issues in the future and getting some strong play up front in the trenches in the years to come.
One quick thing that I want to mention, actually, a couple quick things to touch back on with this, Ross. One, Iowa does kind of get those 6'8" genetic freaks, but they only just stick around town for another 4 weeks, and then they go on spring break, and all hell breaks loose. Um, that one might actually get me kicked off my own podcast. But more seriously, you mentioned Coach Barnett, and I think we really do need to like take a step back a little bit and appreciate really how ingrained George Barnett is in this Iowa culture. Because at this time last year, there were a lot of fans that were frankly a little bit surprised that Barnett had not been canned for the state of play on the offensive line. I never called for it or anything like that, but some folks were a little bit surprised that he was still around. And then every time that we were talking with recruits from that offensive line, the first person that they mentioned was never Kirk, it was never Brian. It was always that connection that they had with George Barnett. And we're starting to see the fruits of that connection, of that teaching that he's doing on that line, and how bought in all these young kids are. And when you get that buy-in, when you get the talent to match it, and when you have, yes, I'm sorry here, a little bit of patience for the development that's necessary on the offensive line. Now, this is, that time of that stretch where the good guys are starting to get really good. And so this is a little bit of a make or break year for the line, for Barnett, by extension, because, the culture is there. We know that now. The production has to be there too. And I think they're set up to succeed. I think they're set up to produce, as well as offensive linemen do, quote, produce. And I do think that the offense is going to be a whole lot better for that, as well as the offensive coordinator regime, starting a new regime on that front too. But yeah, I just wanted to especially shout out Coach Barnett on that, because he's been integral to this line getting back to what Iowa fans are used to.
That is something I was going to address as well, and it's starting to become that conversation of you're getting your guys in the room. Now it's time to produce too. You praise him for his recruiting abilities, which he has done a really good job. That's a guy that he's OL always reference. But now it's time to start producing, right? You got 2 4-stars in this last class, and Will Nolan and Cody Fox. And I know a lot of guys like Bodie McCaslin and Josh Shinowski as well. But this class is another good one, and it's another class that I wanted to reference. You guys mentioned Maulers, you mentioned being nasty. Like these are both guys. Cam Herron was initially recruited to play defensive tackle by Kelvin Bell before he was flipped to offensive line, which is where he was getting his offers from, where everybody else was recruiting him. And then Allgaier is actually listed as a defensive tackle on Rivals, and I think on a couple of the other sites as well, because he's pretty nasty on the defensive side of the ball. Cameron Herron didn't really play defensive end or defensive tackle, but was being recruited as that because Kelvin Bell saw some things he liked. But either way, both guys who could play the defensive side of the ball ultimately, and I think that's really encouraging in terms of athleticism, and that's something that George Barnett really emphasizes with how he wants to do things. And then you throw in Joey Van Wetzinga, who committed last summer, and I think he is exactly what George Barnett wants at center. Watching his film, especially going to watch him last year against Linmar, I think he is the perfect fit there. Again, a guy who could play defensive line, but shoot, he could play fullback in an OG offense, right? Like going back, he would have been really fun to watch at that spot. But going and looking at these guys' offer lists, you mentioned those, Adam. Looking at Cameron Herron's offer list, you got schools like Cincinnati, where he took an official visit, who was really good just a few years ago. Iowa State's on there. Louisville's on there. He took an official visit to Northwestern. Pitt's in there. Purdue, West Virginia, Michigan State had shown interest. Notre Dame showed interest. Wisconsin showed interest. And then you look at Lucas Allgaier, and he's got offers from Iowa State as well. Miami of Florida is in there. Michigan State, Minnesota, Ole Miss, Nebraska, North Carolina State, Washington. These are programs that have churned out some pretty solid offensive and defensive linemen in their history. So Iowa is getting some guys that, you know, you look at them and it's not the 4-star, right? It's not the 5-star, but these are guys that Iowa has continually brought in and made to be among the best in college football, if not just the Big Ten, right? Like this is the type that you need to be successful at Iowa, and assuming George Barnett can put it together, these are going to be guys that could be very successful while at Iowa as well. I really like Allgaier, and I mean I really like Herron too, and Joey Van Wetzinga, right? Like, and Van Wetzinga was the first commit in the 25 class, but if you're talking about fit, I think both of these guys are really solid fits. Lucas Allgaier, the number 10 recruit in the state of Missouri out of St. Louis, and Cameron Herron, the number 36 guard in the country on Rivals. Both Cameron Herron's a 5'6", 3-star, and Allgaier a 5'7", 3-star.
One real quick thing, Ross, I know you want to talk too, but when you mentioned those guys moving to defensive line, I think Kirk Ferentz owes Coach Bell one of those guys after Logan Jones got flipped from defensive tackle to center. And we know that Coach Bell had been really, really high on the specimen, Logan Jones. So maybe there's something coming back out of those three guys. We'll see. Ross, what do you have?
I actually had a similar point. You know, Eliot was talking about those guys transitioning, you know, from maybe playing more defense in high school to, being recruited as offensive linemen. You know, we've seen that transition work beautifully at Iowa. Tyler Linderbaum came in on the defensive side of the ball, transitioned to offense, and was an absolute monster. You know, that's, I think, a best case scenario for that kind of transition. You know, you're not going to get a well, he was a round 1 NFL draft pick, I think, wasn't he? Or let's say yes.
Yeah, he went in the first round of the Ravens. Yep.
That's right. So I mean, that as a center, which is pretty wild too. So, you know, you're not going to get a transformation like that all the time, but it can work well. And I think, you know, if Allgaier and Herron are anything like that, Iowa fans will be very happy with these pickups in a couple years. And the other thing I was just going to, you know, echo what you said about the offer list, Eliot. Like, you know, these aren't the 4-star guys necessarily, but they have a ton of really solid offers from a lot of other Power 4 programs. And that, to me, is a really good indication that, you know, these are really quality recruits with a lot of other strong attention from some really good programs after them. So I think Iowa fans should be really happy that they ended up, you know, they've chosen Iowa and that this is where they want to go. Like, these are 4-star or not, you know, these are the type of guys that can be really good at Iowa. So
And when you look at a guy like Allgaier, who his other two officials were Kansas State, which is a very similar program to Iowa, how they run things, and Northwestern, right? Like, and he's a smart kid, and he's related. Some of you may know the name Ken Allgaier. We've included that in almost all of the preview content. I always make sure to include that. So he's a legacy. His cousin pitched for the baseball team at Iowa. I think his strength coach in high school went to Iowa, Matt Markway. So just connections up and down to
So
the Iowa football program.
you're saying Allgaier really didn't want to wear purple in college
Yes,
is what
that's
it comes
exactly
down to.
Yes.
Smart kid confirmed.
I'm sure UNI was after him hard too. Speaking of purple, but anyway, I really like both of these guys. Both really good fits, and there's more to come. To repeat what I said at the top, more to come in the next few days. If you get plugged in at iowa.rivals.com, use that promo code IAVisits, which will have the link where it'll automatically plug that in. That'll be right there in the description of the podcast and the YouTube video. So you can just pop right down there, click that link, and you get plenty of time free at iowa.rivals.com. Ton of premium content coming at you here, whether it's official visit weekend or not. Some women's basketball content coming from Adam that we're really excited about as well. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be really, really good. Adam's been working really hard on that. So stay tuned for that. Anything else we need to talk about for OV weekend? Because I mean, I don't think, other than keeping tabs on potential commits coming up here. I mean, we don't need to talk about the class as a whole for right now. So
No, not yet. But just sort of, I just have this feeling that by the time we're done recording, this part's already going to be obsolete because there will be another commit, right? But like we sort of have to have that action happen first, and then we'll be glad to talk about it because it does really sound like this has been a seriously fruitful weekend for the Hawkeyes. Exactly what they were looking for.
Yep. And again, lots of good stuff on iowa.rivals.com right now for our premium subscribers. We would love to have you be a part of our board, be a part of the daily conversation about Iowa as well. Now, on a little bit more to some fun off-season stuff. And again, we'll be talking more about the class and the commits as they come because we're going to keep podding out through the summer. So stay tuned with us. We'd love to have you, even if it's just here with us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Hit that subscribe button. But one fun thing that we want to talk about right now, something that we just talked about with a bunch of the athletes at a media availability, was NCAA Football 25 coming out in about 3 weeks here. July 19th is that release date. I haven't purchased a gaming system since I was a freshman in high school, and it was a PlayStation 3. So I am seriously considering going out and getting myself something just to be able to play NCAA 25. I know Mason Richmond, for example, said he was going to get the game, but he probably wasn't going to play it himself. So maybe I can barter for his copy. Who knows? Either way, potential purchase coming in my future. I don't know about you guys. I'm really excited. This is like the one game that could maybe make me go out and get a PlayStation or an Xbox One. But the Road to Glory is calling my name. Now, with this Iowa football roster, something that we wrote about, I think, in the spring was players that we're most excited to use on the current Iowa football roster. And I've got a list of names that I am really excited about. Plus, one thing that I always talk about with the men's basketball team is if I were to use Josh Dix in a game like 2K, I would just kill everybody with Josh Dix. And I've got some players like that on this football team that you might not think, oh, I'm excited to play with that person. That's the first person I think of. But, maybe I could throw him back to return punts and go piss off some punting teams, some special teams coordinators. So let's start off with who you're most excited to use first off, and then we'll go to some of those underrated guys. So Adam, it looks like you have an idea. Who are some guys?
No, I think my idea is who you're thinking of, and so I don't want to snipe it.
Okay.
So
you know what? Why don't we go to Ross then? How's that?
Go for it.
Ross, who are you most excited to play as in NCAA 25?
Man, that's a good question. I'm kind of between two guys. but I'm only going to say one because I don't want to steal maybe one of your choices. I'll go with Luke Lachey at tight end. I like a good tight end. You move the chains, and he's got the potential for big plays too. Really, he should have a really good catch rating. He's not going to be a burner, but he's fast enough. He should have good awareness, run good routes. So I think he's going to be, a really good, reliable option on the offense.
Adam, go for it.
So on
My
defense,
day, Adam.
On defense, I'm going to say Aaron Graves, just because if you've got a really strong defensive tackle, you can ruin a whole lot of play sets from the offense before they begin, sort of like in real life. On offense, I'm saying Caden Weege, because that is speed, 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 and especially in video games, speed kills. So just pull a Le'Shawn Williams and bomb the passes every which way, and send them on fly routes 20, 30 times a game. It's video games. You can do that. Do whatever you want. But I think there's going to be a ton of fly routes with Caden. Eliot, did I snipe your guy?
No, but that is a really good one.
That was my under the radar pick, actually, Adam.
Okay.
And
he's over the radar now.
Yeah, I'm a little worried that EA is not going to give his speed the respect it deserves, but I guess we'll wait and see. But
because he's a walk-on, probably.
I just don't know how much intel they have on him necessarily.
Right.
But if they talk to the players, they're like, hey, everyone says he's fast as hell. So
right.
Give that man his flowers, EA. But we'll just have to wait and see.
So, as far as a player that I think is an easy choice to say I'd like to play with him, I'm between Xavier Wampa and Sebastian Castro. Because when you turn blitz off on like Madden or NCAA 25 and you just run in place right on the edge of the line, that's a sack every time with either Sebastian or with Xavier. And with Xavier, I mean, you could do it with Sebastian too, but Xavier, you can really roam the back end of the defense, just watch the quarterback's eyes and go snag picks. And that's going to be and he can make those athletic plays too, like that pick he made against Utah State last year where he just leapt and made that grab. So he'd be really fun to play as on defense. And then like an underrated couple of guys on defense too would be Zach Lutmer and John Nestor. You know how you can go into the ratings and it says they have a specific rating, but you move them to a different position and that rating goes up by like 5. Like you could throw Nestor at, I don't know, I don't want to have him take Quinn Schulte's spot or anything like that, but you could do that with Cohen Entringer too. Like Cohen Entringer, I think he's too good to keep off the field this year, to tell you the truth. I don't know where he fits. I don't know what kind of package. Maybe you have a Cohen Entringer specific package. But like those 3 guys, and Zach Lutmer is a guy that we've heard about being one of the faster players during conditioning. So he could be fun too. And then it's kind of a quasi underrated, but also a guy that everybody wants to play as. And that's Caleb Brown for me. Like Caden Weegen's going to be returning punts, but for this team more than likely this year, but I would move the roster around and put Caleb Brown back there to return punts just to get the ball in his hands more frequently. That would be the guy that I think I would use a ton on the offensive side of the ball. Just get the ball in his hands and happen, and get him to score. So that's kind of where I'm at. And maybe even, bear with me here. He gets a few snaps on offense at wide receiver, just enough to get his ratings boosted. And you put Brevin Dahl back. Yeah, you knew what I was about to say. Brevin Dahl back there, 10-4 speed, man. You got to use that, right? It's that speed factor, like you talk about with Caden Weegen.
Yeah. This has come full circle because my under the radar guy was Sebastian Castro. So it's a real circle of life situation here. So in his stead, give me Caleb Johnson, and the reason is physically, Caleb Johnson is a freak, a monster. It hasn't always come through on the field yet, and part of that is just because his running style is different than sort of what the coaches expect for a guy that's built like that. But again, this is a video game. You can run them however you want with if it's your own controller. And I think that his measurables are just so freakishly good that you can get an incredibly productive season out of him when you're holding the sticks. And, and you've also got the difficulty down on varsity or what have you. I mean, come on, it's kind of fun to just light teams up for 20 minutes, 60 minutes, what have you. So yeah, he's my under the radar guy. Now that my first and second picks have been gone. Ross, how about you?
I mean, you guys have taken all my picks, so I'm stuck.
Yeah, I think
No,
we've
I
named
like.
about 17 kids now.
I know, I know.
Yeah.
You've cheated immensely, in my opinion, but that's fine. I liked both of the Caleb's. On the defensive side, I don't think he's really under the radar, but I've always liked to play with linebackers, and I think Nick Jackson will be a ton of fun. Like, he's going to be a great guy to bring on blitzes, get after the quarterback. He's going to be just a brick wall for running backs. Like, he's just going to be a great dude in the middle of that defense, just racking up tackles, getting stops, blowing up plays. So yeah, I think he's going to be a lot of fun. No one's going to take a quarterback, huh? None of us are excited to be video K'd.
You
I mean, I
know,
think
When, like Eliot, you were talking about, or one of you two was talking about whether or not the game was going to have intel or this or that. I have a feeling that at the very least to begin the season, I was probably not going to have a quarterback rated over like 75. And it's probably going to be a little bit unfair, and we'll get back to that later in this podcast. Spoiler alert! But I do think that EA is going to, at the minimum, start him out a little bit low. So that's the reason why I stayed away from the QBs for this question. Wink.
I think that's reasonable. Yeah.
that and James Reeser's overall is going to be up to 80 because his speed's going to be a 95. Now, a couple more that I wanted to throw in here. Brian Allen. Here's hoping that they give him some decent numbers because he just really has to put it together in my mind's eye. It's because it's a specific defense. You can't just go out there and out athlete everybody at this level, but he is an athlete and he is explosive and he is talented. So maybe he's one of those guys where you plug him in so he does the right thing and then he dominates, right? Like, so maybe it's a situation like that, but
Yeah, I'm not Phil Parker.
exactly.
Like, I'm not asking him to do anything but take down the QB. Come on, let's go.
That, and who knows, man? With this receiver crew, Seth Anderson, throw him in as an underrated guy. I mean, I feel like we've all almost forgot about him, considering they brought in Jacob Gill, considering he barely touched the field at the end of last year. He's almost become underrated at this point. Big flip, but we'll see how things turn out for him. And what he looks like as an overall rating, which I'm intrigued. Once those overall ratings come out, like, that's some content for us. That's going to be fun to put together. Now,
LeSean Williams said that he wanted to be minimum 85 overall. LeSean, I'm not sure that EA is going to give you that kind of love, but I am very curious to see where they rate each of Iowa's running backs, because that's a big, deep stable of tater toters.
I don't think anyone on Iowa's offense is going to be rated 85 except maybe Luke Lachey.
I was going to say, yeah, big play Lachey, and that's probably about it.
Yeah,
yeah.
the offense is in a very big you got to prove it
Yeah.
position, I think.
If there were any player solely based on talent to get up there too, I feel like Caleb Brown, maybe, but I feel like he's going to be like high 70s just because of how bad Iowa's offense has been. And the production hasn't quite been there yet. But who's going to be Iowa's 3 top rated players? How's that? Jay Higgins, number 1, right?
He's got to be.
Jay Higgins, Nick Jackson, number 2.
If my 3, if I had to guess, and if I had to predict how EA is going to approach it, I think they're going to go with Wampa, Higgins, Lachey. I think they're going to give a little bit of love to Iowa for the tight end position. I think those are going to be the three, but I think there are a few different names that would make a lot of sense. Ross, what do you think?
I'm with you on Lachey and Higgins. I could see Jackson over Wampa. I could
Just from
maybe
a
see Cast.
production perspective, right? Like,
Yeah. And I think Castro's going to be way up there too. Like I think if you give me 5, which you didn't, so I'm going to cheat here because you guys cheated before. But if you give me 5, I'd go Higgins, Jackson, Lachey, Wampa, and Castro as my top 5. But I feel like that's just where the concentration is of like kind of that experienced talent, and that they've got that production now, and they've got the measurables too that will work out well for EA and everything. So that's where I'm thinking.
You know what I'm thinking about here too, and thinking about the defense is just by sheer ignorance, you have to think that like Carson Shire and Jaden Harrell are gonna be like 70s, but in all reality, they'd be like an 85 probably.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah,
they
I
had
mean,
to
like
play,
Ethan Hurkett's probably not going to crack 80. And Ethan Hurkett could probably start on about 90-95% of D1 teams. Like that is I'm already bracing myself for the injustice that I don't know is going to happen or not.
I actually am really curious to see like the defensive ratings overall, and especially like some of those kind of, I hate to call them second tier defenders because that's not accurate at all, but like the guys below the headline names, I guess we can put it, because I mean the overall defensive rating is what, like 94, 95.
I think it's
I
94.
think that's what I saw. Yeah.
That's an outstanding overall rating. So I mean, I don't know exactly what the algorithm is to determine that, but I'm thinking the individual ratings have to be pretty solid too to contribute to that overall rating. So I think we're going to see some nice ratings, really nice ratings on the defensive side of the ball. Definitely still some guys like you said that, I think Harrell especially, like those, that's a dude that's really good but just hasn't had a chance to play. And when you don't have that on-field experience, I think it's tough to get a rating that reflects you. But yeah, I am really curious to see the defensive ratings.
And then like what do they do with Jermari Harris and Deshaun Lee, assuming it's Deshaun Lee at that? Because he had some really good experience last year. He just didn't, get a pick. Jermari Harris, his production declined from his last season that he was fully healthy. Like, are they 87 and 84, like, or 86 and 83? Like, because that doesn't exactly reflect a 94 overall defense, right? Those numbers on the outside. So
Not necessarily, but it's also sort of a reflection of how good they are relative to every other defense.
yeah,
So, it might be the case that as the quote weak links, they're still the, 83, 84, 85, which is about where I would expect them to be because you can't really put them lower than that. They were never liabilities last season, right? Like, and that's not even just a like because of the defense, because of the scheme. No, like both of those guys were very productive and did an awfully good job for most of the snaps that they were on the field. So, yeah, my guess is if there is any starter that would be lower than an 80 on that Iowa defense, maybe Schulte, maybe even YA Black. I don't think it's warranted for any of them, frankly, but again, just sort of trying to figure out where their thought process is going to be.
I think I might be biased on YA Black because I feel like he's going to be at least mid 80s. But like that Wisconsin game last year, I think
Oh,
did
he
him
deserves to be mid 80s.
right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. The Schulte might, I feel like he'll be low 80s. Just like just the lacking athleticism, right? Like he's just good at his position, and that's all he needs to be. And like
Yeah.
to revert back to the corners, I think the thing for them is they're not Cooper DeJean. Like that's the knock on them, right? I don't know if because they were both good, but they weren't elite, right?
Yeah. I'm curious to see how much these ratings reflect like PFF rankings. Because back in the earlier iterations of NCAA, those didn't exist. And so it was a lot of like tea leaf reading. But now at the very least, there is this opportunity to quantify how good these guys are at certain things. So if that reflects that, honestly, that's probably going to be pretty nice and better for the game than if it's just EA's own calls. But we'll see. Ross, I interrupted you.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Eliot, you mentioned Cooper, and that just kind of got a question from me. Is say this game was coming out last year when Iowa still had Cooper on the roster. What would Cooper have been ranked or rated in the game?
Probably like a 94.
Yeah,
At least,
right?
especially with the return game. He might have come in at the start of the season at about a 94, but apparently they're going to be updating these guys' rankings as the season goes on. I think by the end of the year, or at the very least, like by November, while he was still healthy, high 90s, high 90s. Because oh man, he was good last season, and
yeah.
frankly, in terms of like what he deserves, to quote Nobel Prize winner Lindsay Lohan, the limit does not exist.
Yes. Now, while we're talking about next year and how things project for NCAA 25, what we wanted to do a little bit before we get into that, we did have a question from one of our premium subscribers, which again, you can be part of the questions, be part of our podcast. If you join us at iowa.rivals.com, use that promo code IAVisits, you'll get free access to that until fall camp. But from Onyong.063, his question is, who do you think will be rotational pieces on the offensive line? And who do you think is capable of playing both offensive tackle spots? Now, let's get to the offensive tackle spots, because it's going to be Mason Richmond and Jennings Dunker, right? Like, I don't think anybody expects anything less at that left tackle and right tackle spot going into this year. Even though Jennings was out for a good portion of the spring, he's going to be a guy they lean on at right tackle this fall. I mean, who else is gonna would fill a spot like that? Like Jack Dotzler.
Yeah, I mean, Cade
Trevor
Piper's
Lauck.
probably going to be in that mix. Or are they looking at him at guard?
Who now?
Cade Piper.
Guard.
Okay, then not him. Uh, but yeah, in terms of that rotation, yeah, I think Dotzler is probably, like, Iowa might just be three deep at tackle this season. I remember during or prior to the open game or open practice in the spring. Afterwards, it was afterwards, not prior. Farron said that they were really hoping to get to eight, maybe nine deep on the offensive line in terms of guys that they can trust on Saturdays. So that to me sounds like 8 with 9 as a stretch goal. So, I mean, that DeYoung's in the mix. Piper, obviously, they've got that faith in. So, yeah, Dotzler, I think he's 8 in that stretch of 8. Maybe Bo Stevens is in that mix too, but I think that is starting to get to about the line where Iowa's got that level of trust with their linemen at this point. And honestly, that's fine. That's good. Like, you want to not have to trust Trevor Lauck already, right? Like, you want to be able to say, like, okay, if something happens to Logan Jones again or something happens to Connor Colby again, we'll be okay. You obviously want those upperclassmen, those projected starters, to stay healthy and to give as much as they can, because the best ability is still availability. But it won't be the disaster that Iowa's been sort of trying to avert for the last 3 seasons. Would be
Tyler Ellsbury. Tyler Ellsbury
Yeah.
is another name in there.
Yeah.
That you've got to consider, and he might be starting at one of the.
Yeah, I was figuring he was going to start at guard, honestly, because he's been. I know that they've got a lot of trust in him on that line.
Right. So I think honestly that's probably what we're going to be looking at. I think Nick DeYoung is probably going to be the backup right tackle. He was playing right tackle with Jennings Dunker out in the spring. And so I think that's probably what that rotation is going to look like. Ross, did you have any thoughts there?
No, you guys nailed it. I think you've got the 8 or 9 guys, and barring some guys that develop really quickly, in fall, or there are some really unfortunate injury circumstances, that's who we're going to be looking at, is those 8 or 9 guys that you and Adam laid out there.
Cool. So now, one question that we posed to our premium subscribers was bold predictions going into next year. Adam, did you come up with one, or Ross, did you? Because it looks like you got one, Adam.
Yeah, I alluded to it a little bit earlier. My bold prediction: Cade McNamara, at worst, third team All Big Ten. I think he is set up for success for the first time in a Hawkeye uniform. He's got an offense that opposing defensive coordinators have not seen, have not really been able to adjust to yet. He's been able to practice, and every time that we've asked about how he's been staying involved in the offense, it's really been everything but the practicing and the that 11 on 11 work. As much as he can do, he has been doing. And we just got word recently, and we're waiting on confirmation from the school on this, but apparently he's been fully cleared. It's middle to late June, so it's going to be an opportunity for him, and apparently his body's already responding well to everything. So I think he's set up for success finally. And the last time that he was, I think that you could really say that he's set up for success. The last time that happened for him, he guided Michigan to the playoff, right? Or a Big Ten championship at a minimum. So I think this is like, if the Big Ten had a comeback player of the year, he would be like my number one for that. But in lieu of that, I my bold prediction is third team All Big Ten. Come at me, bros. Come at me.
How many touchdown passes? How many games will he have to play? One. How many touchdown passes will he have to throw in order to solidify that spot?
Well, probably 25 or so would be my guess. To get into that sort of like rarefied air. But I mean,
good luck, Adam.
USC.
That is bold.
What? Hey, did it say lukewarm predictions? No. Like Washington lost Penix, and we've been demonetized. USC lost Caleb Williams, right? Like there's a bunch of guys gone. McCarthy isn't there anymore at Michigan, right? Like I think the stage is a little bit set for Cade to walk into a little bit of like lower tier hardware as an all Big Ten QB, and he's sort of got the pedigree for it, or at the very least the the experience leading a high powered offense. So that's where I'm going with it. Beat me. Get bolder than that.
Ross, I'm gonna let you follow that because I'm not doing it.
Okay. I have to follow that. Great. My bold prediction. I think Iowa is going to be higher on the playoff committee rankings than people expect in October and November. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoff, but I think they're going to be in that conversation more than people are expecting. I think they'll be. I think they're going to get off to a good start to the season, and that's going to position them well to get into that conversation with, a couple good wins, and if they can avoid losing to teams other than Ohio State, I think they'll be in a good position. So I think they're flying a little bit under the radar in the Big Ten. Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon seem to be your big discussion items for the playoff. And I agree they should be favored. I'm not going to argue Iowa has anything to be favored over those teams, but I think the schedule is solid. The team is very good, assuming a lot of question marks on offense, acknowledged. But if they get some good answers to those questions, I think there's a lot of potential for this team to be on a more national stage in October and November.
So flirting with that like mid-teens sort of area then.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other
15,
thing too, is
16.
this is the first year of our 12-team playoff. So,
Bingo. Yeah.
you don't have to be in a top 5, top 10 position to potentially make the playoff. And that would be a big ask for Iowa. But this is still a big ask. Not gonna say it's not, but it's a more achievable one in my view than it would have been under the previous playoff format.
Okay, before I drop my my bold prediction, and no, I'm not stalling. I have one ready. But before I drop my own bold prediction, we're going back to Ongyang .063, who says, this is insane. Like, there was Adams, and then there's this. My bold prediction is that LeSean Williams and Caleb Johnson each run for 1,000 yards, and Kamari Moulton ends up with 10 total touchdowns. This is like a 9.75 on a scale of 1 to 10. I don't know a scenario where this happens. What we were saying before we hit the record button was good luck. We hitting one rusher over 1,000 yards and one rusher with 10 plus touchdowns. Neither of those things happened last year. Granted, again, we're talking about new offense, but still, this is believe it when we see it, folks. And I haven't seen it yet. So that is fucking crazy.
Hey, Anyang, drop the strain, buddy.
Right.
Let us know what you're packing the bong with, because we gotta smell that.
What do you guys? What was the last time and that Iowa had 2 1,000 yards rushers? Ross, you looked that up for us.
Yeah, 2016. It was LaShawn Daniels and Akram Wadley, each went over the 1,000-yard mark, which was a heck of a season for Iowa's offense. The ground game was very potent that year. Getting back to that level this year would be very impressive based on, like you said, what we've seen last year, and it would be a gigantic leap forward for that entire offense. The line, the backs, the play calling, the whole kit and caboodle would need to be tremendously better. But, like you said, you asked for bold predictions, not lukewarm predictions, and we will not doubt our man's boldness there, because that was very bold.
Ross, can you just enlighten us? In 2016 season, was there a third member of that backfield that just had 10 plus touchdowns on top of that? Because my memory might be fading, but I don't think there was.
There was not. No.
How many touchdowns did LaShawn Daniels and Akram Wadley combine for?
They combined for 20. They had 10 of each. Very even. The third most rushing touchdowns on that team was CJ Beathard with 2.
Oh yeah,
there's only one football to go around still,
Right. I don't even know if
Exactly.
that's a strain. That might just be straight up DMT, straight to the skull. But nonetheless, bold predictions, not lukewarm, bold. My bold prediction is that Luke Lachey will not lead Iowa in receptions, receiving yards, or receiving touchdowns.
Now that is crazy. That might be the craziest thing that I've heard yet. We're saying
what?
Either one. How is he not going to lead in receptions?
What?
Who's going to get more receptions than Luke Lachey?
Caleb Brown or Josh Gill or Jacob Gill in this offense. Here, bear with me. Okay, what if I subtract receiving touchdowns? How's that? Receptions and receiving yards. Because receiving yards,
receptions are what I'm getting hung up on.
I know.
Touchdowns, or this or that. But I feel like Lachey's going to be the number one in this offense still.
Okay, maybe receptions, but I don't see. Again, bold, but I would take yards out of that for sure, because Yak factors in here, right? And that was a big part of what Sky Moore did with Western Michigan in this offense. And Caleb Brown and Jacob Gill are looking for Yak. Now, the reason I say receptions as well is because I think Luke Lachey had 2 catches in the spring. in all of that, and now what it's a little bit based on what we've seen. So maybe not even that bold, even though you're looking at me like I'm absolutely insane out of my mind. DMT right to the skull, right? Like I say that based on the information that we have at hand. On the other side of it, I'm not saying that I hope this is the case, because what I hope is the case is Tim Lester recognizes who is the most talented and adjusts the offense for the sake of getting the ball in the players' hands who are the most talented on the offense, right? But I say receptions and receiving yards, Luke Lachey does not lead the offense in either of those statistics.
Well,
We're just going to make a note of that.
One thing I'll say in your defense, Eliot, is, one thing we've heard about from receivers and some other players is they're doing more downfield passing, right? So that too is something where, I don't think they're going to be targeting Luke Lachey downfield as much. That's something where I think we're going to see the receivers get involved, and that's going to send some of those receiving yards to players other than Luke Lachey. So I think that could be a factor as also.
That, and we're going to be seeing bubbles. Like, their receivers are going to be getting the ball in the flat and being trusted to make a play. You're not going to give the ball to Luke Lachey in the flat and trust him to make a play. You're going to get the ball to Caleb Brown over there. You're going to get the ball to Jacob Gill. You're going to be throwing the ball deep to Dayton Howard, Jarriett Bowie, probably Caleb Brown too. TJ Washington's going to be getting the ball in those bubble screens. Like, it's going to be spread out more than it has been in previous years. I mean, I think every time I wrote about the Iowa offense, I always wrote that Charlie Jones had more receptions than the entirety of all the wide receivers on Iowa's offense the last 2 years. I guess Charlie Jones was graduated by then, from Purdue. But this is just a situation where offensive design, I think, is just going to be different. Yes, the tight end has to be an emphasis, right? It's Iowa. But I think you're also going to be splitting those catches with Addison Ostrenga and probably Zach Ortworth. I like Zach Ortworth. I think he's going to see some time this year, maybe even Gavin Hoffman. And I don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility.
I think we're going to see a much more even distribution of catches than we've seen from the receiving options. Last year it actually ended up being relatively even, as lousy as the numbers were, but that was because Lachey got hurt in the third game, all got hurt halfway through the season. So like their seasons were done. They couldn't keep, if they had been healthy, Iowa would have kept spamming the ball to them without question on offense, and it probably would have been the best option, unfortunately, as it was. But the 2 years before that, when you had healthy tight end options, they had the number one tight end had like double the catches of the number one wide receiver in the offense. I agree with Eliot. That's not going to happen this year. That is absolutely not going to be the case. We're going to see receivers. I think it's possible Lachey ends up with the most, but if it is, it's like he's got like 2 more catches than like Caleb Brown or something. Like I think it's going to be neck and neck all year long for the most part.
I've got one more, and I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it's more likely than people expect. And no, I didn't take a bong rip in the last 5 minutes, but here we go. Bold prediction number 2. Nick Jackson ends up with more tackles than Jay Higgins. I think it is plausible. I don't think it's likely, but I think especially, this is year 2 for Nick Jackson in a Phil Parker defense. It's all gravy for him, right? Like he got that special waiver from the NCAA, but now he actually has that opportunity to he has gotten acclimated with the playbook. Now it's time to really grow into it and really, sort of get it hardwired into him. And every time that we've talked to Jay Higgins, he is the biggest Nick Jackson fan on the team, the biggest. And I think that's not for nothing. I don't think that's just him being a nice teammate. And especially over the last half of last season, we really started to see that production come from Nick. And, super smart dude. And this is his opportunity to get that full season with the Iowa strength and conditioning, with his teammates. All of the things that really were working against him last season are not going to be working against him this season. So, and then also, like, injuries are part of the game. And so there is that sort of unpredictability too. So again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't think it's a, better than 50%, probability or anything like that. But do not be that surprised if Nick Jackson ends the season with more total tackles than Jay Higgins. That's what I'm going to throw out there.
I will still be surprised, because what does the defense do? It funnels tackles to the Mike linebacker, right? That's what this defense does. And Jay had 60 more tackles than Nick Jackson did last year. Nick Jackson will have the all-time record for most tackles in a career, but Jay Higgins will have more tackles than him this year. I would bet the mortgage on it. I don't bet money, and I especially don't bet on the Hawkeyes. I have more creative things to do with money, I promise. Well,
you don't even have a mortgage.
I don't have a mortgage. I have a Roth IRA.
Bet it anyway.
A strong Roth IRA and a good credit score. So I that's my refute to that idea. Ross, do you have anything to say on that?
I see where Adam's coming from, but I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Eliot. I just think that the design of Iowa's defense just lends itself towards Higgins getting more tackles. But I do think, you noted there was a 60 tackle difference between them last year. Higgins had 170 and Jackson had 110. I think it'll be a lot closer this year. I think they'll be much, much more even this year. Definitely.
In the spirit of the presidential debates happening this weekend, I'm just going to chime in on Adam's bold prediction there.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I needed to do. I was going to do it over here with the mic, but you guys needed to see it. So anyway, to avoid all the politics coming up here that is going to be on your feed, join us at iowa.rivals.com and use that promo code IAVisits. We'll have that link right there in the description for you. Just open up your phone, scroll down wherever you're at, click that link. You could join us for free till fall camp, and we have a ton of premium content. We'd love to have you there on the discussion boards, and you're going to get a ton of great inside information from us regarding official visits, football recruiting, football coming up as well, and women's basketball. That story coming from Adam this week.
Yeah, presumably. Like I'm waiting on 2 more quotes. I know one of them's coming on Tuesday, and then it's getting it all down. But it's going to be long form. It's going to be cool. I've had some tremendous conversations already. Like this feels like my little off-season opus. So I cannot wait for you guys to see more. And also, we got a little bit of site news coming up this week too. So keep your eyes peeled for that. A little bit of some cosmetic changes going on not only on Rivals but on our site as well. So everybody, get ready for all that. It's going to be a bright, new, exciting time at the site. We're going to have some killer content. We've already got the killer content, and we've got even more coming up. So now is the time to get subscribed. Promo code IAVisits, free until fall camp. Eliot and Ross were like, "Don't do it. We're going to go bankrupt." And I said, "No, we're doing it. We're doing it for the fans. Everything else be damned." But that is on you listeners / viewers on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on Tuesday or later, you already missed it. So get signed up now / Monday while it's still active. Promo code IAVisits. It is worth it.
Don't miss out. Don't miss out. We're like Oprah right now. You get it free till fall camp. You get it free till fall camp. Everybody. I'm not going to. Okay. I embarrassed myself enough. That'll wrap it up here for this episode of HawkCast. We appreciate you tuning in with us. And don't forget, again, that code and that link is right there in the description. All you got to do is scroll down and you'll find it there to sign up with us. Again, you get that free content premium content until fall camp. So do that now. If you're not a subscriber just yet, and if you are on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, drop a comment, let us know what's your bold prediction, and we'll react to them. That's what we offer. We'll react to your bold predictions on our YouTube channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe we'll talk about them on our next pod too. It is the off season, so now we're getting crazy. Also, who are you excited to play with or play as on NCAA Football 25? Very excited for that to coming up here in July. Again, if you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, leave that rate and review. Hit that subscribe. We'd love to have you. Don't miss an episode that way. Of course, I am Eliot Clough at Eliot Clough on Twitter, joined by Ross Binder and Adam Jacoby. We run the site iwithoutrivals.com. This was an episode of HawkCast, and we will see you next time.